What you're listening to here is the, well, apart from a Telecaster and a guitar player, is the HeadRush GigBoard. Now, this is a very special piece of kit. This is really the latest sort of concept in a line of kind of 20 years of guitar amp and effects simulation. You know, we began the 21st century with things like this. The fantastic Pod by Line 6, which has got a lot of great sounds and effects, but this goes even further. Now, this is the sort of the smaller sibling of the HeadRush pedal board, but no less capable. Now, I've got an expression pedal connected up to the back of this, and it does work. I've got a Roland expression pedal here, and I know that that does work with this. Apparently some 10k resistors don't work so well with this, so make sure it's 25 or more. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you sort of some of the features of this, and it's really about the sounds. In terms of things like storing patches and changing settings, the manual's very good, and it does tell you something about this when you realise that the manual is only 16 pages. Only 16. And indeed, some of those pages aren't particularly filled up with text. So that should say there's quite a lot right with this, because it's very user-friendly. It's got a 7-inch touchscreen display, and as you can see on the other camera here, I'm on Scared Robot, which is that the patch that you're listening to at the moment. And we have various lights here which are showing the 4 stomp boxes that are currently active, so you can switch any of those off or on using the foot switches, and you can assign everything. You can do anything you like. If you've got more than 4 effects, you can have banks where you can switch effects on and off. But, and this is where it starts to get complicated, lots and lots of guitarists have too much equipment, or lots of equipment. And wouldn't it be nice if everything could come in just one box? Well, it can with this, because this has got amp simulators, speaker simulators. You can change where the mic is with respect to the amp, whether it's on axis, off axis. You can do anything you like. Now, I've got my little Fender Blues Deluxe amp here as well, which I'm going to plug this into in a minute so we can have a listen to that. But everything that you're hearing is direct into the recorder. So it's got a, well, if I double tap on that, we've got a 64 Black Lux Vibralux rather, Fender amp. Of course, you can't call them that because it's copyright, but you can change your amps. You can change the amp to any of the, well, any amp you like, really. 59 tweed bass, black, JTM 45 Blues Breaker. Let's just get the phaser off there. And of course we can change any of the settings. They're not sort of control knobs on the amp like you get, but you can just basically adjust your settings here. So volume. I mean, that sounds pretty blues breakery to me. Of course, the purists will say, well, you've got to have your amplifiers and you've got to have your 1965 Vox AC30 with blues speakers, or your Fender. The list can just go on and on and on. But the fact is, because you can get lots of different amps on this, it's all about the end user as well. The person listening to it, are they going to know that you've used a 59 Vibralux? Or are they going to know whether you've used this Blues Deluxe or this Blues Deluxe? I don't think so. It's all, you know, guitarists, of course, or any musician likes to play with an instrument that they trust and they like the sound of. But I quite like the sound of this, really. Well, I love the sound of this. All of the effects you can change as well. If we go back to the phaser, for example, if I double tap on that, you can sort of change the phaser that you've got, whether it's in stereo or mono, and the rate. There's a button marked sync here, off or on. Now, this has got MIDI in and out, which means that you can have your master tempo on your computer, for example, feeding this, and then you can decide whether you want a triplet, eighth note, or whatever you want to do. Loads of possibilities. If we go back to the patches, let's have we'll look through some of these. Jim. I'll play that properly. Hey, what's wrong with that? Crossroads. Now this is where we have a little bit of a difference in terms of the amp. Usually a Fender amp will sit inside a Fender box driving the speaker that was put in at the Fender factory. But we've got here a little Fender, well, tweed bassman going into an AC30 cabinet. But why not? Why can't you have that? You know, there's a spring reverb here. Now, this features a USB port on it as well, which allows you to use it as an audio interface. So you can record to your computer via this, but you can also play it back via this in case you wanted to reamp stuff. Really, it's just well thought out. And it's a tiny little box that's the size of an A4 sheet of paper. Now, some people may berate the fact that it's got a sort of a DC power supply, but you just have to look after it. You know, they're not as tough as a 3-pin mains lead, but the advantages are you won't get any sort of AC noise, and the thing can of course be smaller. Now, all of the complaints that I've seen online about this, somebody's on YouTube says, oh, I'm both excited and disappointed. And you think, well, okay, why are you disappointed? Well, the effects loop on this is mono only. Now, the idea is with an effects loop is that you can use your existing pedals. If you've got a pedal that you absolutely cannot do without, you can integrate it in with this. However, if that is a stereo pedal that you like, maybe you've got a really nice stereo sort of chorus or space echo or something, no, you can't. But this, the design of this is meant to be a piece of kit that has everything on board that you can just call on for your sounds. So yes, while I understand the disappointment, we're living in an age now where anything is possible with guitar and everything should be tried. You know, the nostalgia of having a 65-year-old amplifier in your studio that sounds amazing. Of course, yeah, it's going to sound great. But why can't we have new things? Why can't we develop musical instruments? Every other musical instrument in the world has developed over the decades and centuries. Why can it not be the same with guitar? Crazy Ted. Yeah, great, lovely. Now, the stereo reverb that you hear or the stereo effects that you hear direct in on the computer are all very fine. But let's see what happens now. If I plug the output of this into the power amp input of my Fender amp, let's see how well that amplifier responds. I think the answer is very well. So if I just take the reverb off, great. The volume pedal at the moment is after the amplifier. But if I've got an amp that's got some gain on it, I'd want to probably move the volume pedal so it's before the amp, so you can clean up your distorted sound. So full on. Now my expression pedal is obviously a bit sensitive at the bottom, and you can do things like go into global settings. Let's have a look. Pedal polarity, normal invert. Yeah, there'll be some sort of calibration. All of that is in the manual, and when you look deep in the manual that's online, because the manual here, this quick start guide of 16 pages, is really all you need. In fact, I mean, some people just get by without using that. And that's really nice to just use something without a manual. It's a bit like GarageBand for iOS. You just go, oh yeah, oh great, oh yeah, that's... So if you look online, you can get the detailed manual which allows you all sorts of additional features with this, including the ability to put your own band logo on the screen. For those vain guitarists amongst you, you may want to have a picture of yourself on your HeadRush GigBoard. Yes. So, looking through some more of the plugins here, discard changes. I don't want to save anything, like a Sandman. Yeah, great. Let's have a Telecaster. Let's have a Sweet Home Bro. That sounds like, looks like a sort of a bluesy type affair. Great. Now, I want to put an effect on that. Now, I want my spring reverb to go at the end. So I'm going to shift that there, and then maybe add, I don't know, whatever you like. A little compressor, perhaps. Standard issue. Let's see what that sounds like. Yeah, it just allows that amp to sort of be a little bit more gritty, a little bit more aggressive. Now, the foot switches on here, you can assign either to do your pedals, when you can have any 4 at once, or you can actually shift a scene to other pedals. You can see I've got 9 spaces on here, so you think, well, how are you going to get that out of... You can have various setups which allow you to click and hold a switch to go to your other pedals to switch on or off. Now, while that might sound a little bit sort of, oh no, I've got to go through a particular menu, you can save all of your patches and all of your rigs up. So you can have 4 pedals, or you can have, you know, something that hasn't got that pedal instead, that you might not be able to switch unless you use a menu, and you can save all of your patches very easily. There are something like 200 and something spaces. So frankly, if you can't save your stuff, I think now's the time to get a bit minimal with your guitar sounds, perhaps. So that switch just switches on my compressor, and I've got my spring reverb here. I've also got the vibrato on the amplifier here. Now, if I double click the amp, I've got vibrato, and the speed, oh, you can see it's 1/8. It's an 8th note, but it doesn't know what an 8th note is at the moment because it's nothing's plugged into it. But you can now, the noise gate, you can hear that thing is clicking in and out. Not sure I like that all that much. But if you go to the amplifier, so no, wait, back to the main page. If you go to input here and double click on that, you have a gate threshold here. Now, lots of guitarists don't really like that because if you want to play quietly, it just cuts your sound. So you just set your gate threshold all the way down, and it means you can hear the vibrato cutting in and out as you would on a real amplifier with vibrato. So there's lots that you can do. If you've got really high gain stuff here, then perhaps, yes, you'd want your the gate to kick in, so it doesn't make a lot of noise. Now, the pedals at the moment, you can see that I've got essentially 5 pedals before my amp and speaker and 4 pedals after. Now, of course, in the real world, you can't have any pedals after your speaker because the speaker is the speaker, which shifts the sound through the air. But you can move anything you like. You can have all sorts of things. I mean, I could put a air flanger after my speaker. If I wanted. You can also arrange your pedals so you have like a little sort of 2 loops, like a stereo loop. So you can put the air flanger through your speaker and the spring reverb goes through another amp, and then it's mixed together at the end. The idea of this really is to essentially increase the number of possibilities that you have to get the sounds that you never knew were there. Now, that doesn't mean to say it's a sound you never knew you didn't need, because actually, as musicians, as composers, as recording artists, as songwriters, we need always to come up with new things that just make things just a bit more fun and a little bit more sort of individual. But you can do all of that stuff on here. More cowbell, that sounds like a Rolling Stones patch to me. This, my sister-in-law lent me this. She said, "Oh, I'll do a demo on this." And she is the biggest Rolling Stones fan that exists. She even knows their birthdays and, you know, middle names and all that, you know, and given names, you know. I'd happily take this out on a gig with my amplifier. Of course, if you've got a little gig in a pub somewhere, a little club, and you need all the sounds, you can just stick it through the PA system. You don't need to shift loads of amps and stuff in. So this box, you know, if your guitar case is big enough, it might fit in there. And you've got all of your effects, your amp simulations with your guitar in one single case. And of course, you know, the convenience does come at a potential price, but I've yet to hear that price here, really. Purple Bike. What do you want? As I say, there's loads and loads of sort of presets in here, and you can overwrite them, you can recall them all if you set the, you know, set up the let's find something that's got a bit more Windy Mary. Sounds good. There's a looper on here. Click and hold the third button. We get a loop thing, which is rather good. Just going to cut out the gate on this amp, but just a little bit more. So yeah, it just responds a bit more. So if we go back to the looper. Now, with the looper, if you want to have a different amp simulator, you can. You just go to Exit and then find your plugin on here. Go back to your looper. You name it. 20 minutes of recording time on here, which is perhaps quite excessive, but you can store some loops as well. You can do all sorts of things. The HeadRush GigBoard, I think it's rather special.